Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into one of the most fascinating, honestly mind-boggling paradoxes in the entire history of modern sports. We are talking about Marcelo Alberto Bielsa Caldera. Now, depending on who you ask, he's known as El Loco, the Madman, or he's El Master, the Master. He's incredibly enigmatic, super polarizing, and just undeniably influential. But here's the paradox that makes him so absolutely captivating. Marcelo Bielsa has never won a World Cup. He's never won the Copa Libertadores. He has never ever won a major European trophy. And yet, if you look closely, his fingerprints are literally everywhere in modern football.
I mean, just think about Pep Guardiola, arguably the most decorated and successful manager of his generation, right? Well, Guardiola flat out calls Bielsa the best coach in the world. And the thing is, Guardiola isn't alone here. Top-tier managers across the globe basically worship at the altar of Bielsa. Mauricio Pochettino actually refers to him as a second father. Guys like Diego Simeone and Jorge Sampaoli credit him as their foundational inspiration. The sheer volume of elite praise this guy gets, it completely cements his undeniable influence on the sport.
So, that brings us to the big question framing our entire deep dive today. How exactly did a man with 0 Champions League titles completely change modern football? How does someone who hasn't secured those massive shiny trophies end up shaping the way the most successful teams in the world actually play the game? It's a pretty provocative thought, isn't it? Well, to understand his legacy, we really have to look right past the trophy cabinet and directly at his revolutionary philosophy. He changed football not by winning everything, but by thinking completely differently than everyone else.
Section 1. Tactical Chaos and Transitions. Deconstructing the Bielsa Machine. Okay, let's dive into this and look at the actual mechanics of his on-pitch tactical revolution.
So the absolute engine of Bielsa's strategy is his famous 3-3-1-3 formation. It's a bold, honestly almost audacious setup. You've got 3 defenders, 3 midfielders, 1 central playmaker, and 3 attackers. And what this specifically does is intensely flood the final third of the pitch. It creates the signature setup that we call numerical superiority in attack. By committing so many players forward, Bielsa guarantees his team always has an extra man when pressing the opponent's defense. It's like a giant puzzle where he's overwhelming them through sheer numbers and positional geometry.
Now, this numerical superiority, it's built on 4 core tactical tenets. First up is extreme verticality. Bielsa strongly believes that just holding possession for the sake of it is totally pointless. The goal is to move that ball forward rapidly. Second, lightning quick transitions. For him, the game is fundamentally about the transition, striking before the opponent can even organize. Third is relentless high pressing. Way before gegenpressing became this trendy buzzword everyone uses, Bielsa demanded his teams hunt in packs, winning the ball back deep in the opponent's half. The striker is your first defender, the goalkeeper is your first attacker. And finally, fluid positional play, where players are constantly rotating to exploit little pockets of space.
To really understand how deep this tactical obsession goes, just consider the number 11. Back in 2006, right before Pep Guardiola took his first major managerial job at Barcelona, he traveled all the way to Argentina for one reason: to meet with Marcelo Bielsa. They sat together in a room, fiercely debating tactics, analyzing formations, and diving into the absolute minutiae of the game for 11 consecutive hours. Think about that. A young Guardiola absorbing Bielsa's obsessive wisdom like a sponge for almost half a day. It is this utterly unhinged, legendary moment that perfectly illustrates just how relentlessly Bielsa's mind works.
Section 2. Forging Fitness, the Reality of Murder Ball. Now, having a genius tactical plan drawn up is one thing, but how do you physically engineer players to actually execute it?
Well, for that, we have to look at his incredible tenure with Leeds United. If you played under Bielsa at Leeds, you became intimately and probably painfully familiar with the concept dubbed murder ball, or sometimes kill ball. This is the absolutely legendary, punishing training regime he implemented to completely transform a sleeping giant of a club. And it worked, ultimately helping Leeds return to the Premier League after a brutal 16-year exile.
The method to this madness basically works in 3 rigorous steps. First, players enduring tense tactical drilling, which often lasts a full 90 minutes. Then comes the murder ball itself. It's a full-speed, full-contact match simulation where staff literally surround the pitch to constantly keep the ball in play. I'm talking no fouls, no throw-ins, no stopping, just non-stop lung-busting running. And that leads directly to the third step, superior in-game positional speed. Because of this totally grueling method, Bielsa's Leeds squad consistently topped the Premier League running charts. They just flat out outran, outworked, and outpressed the absolute best teams in England.
You know, Bielsa actually once put Athletic Bilbao through a grueling 90-minute session on the actual morning of a major European match against Manchester United. Sir Alex Ferguson was completely blown away by it. But Bielsa's underlying logic was brilliantly simple. He said, that training session showed the players where to run, allowed them to run less in the game because they were in the correct positions. So it's not just about running yourself into the ground, it's about running smart. It creates this improved physical fitness and spatial awareness that makes game day feel almost automatic.
Section 3. International Revolutions, from Chile to Uruguay. Let's shift gears from club football for a minute to trace how these intense ideas evolved on the global stage. Bielsa's international impact is just profound. Starting in 2007, he arrived in Chile, a team that was really struggling, and immediately implemented his signature 3-3-1-3. By the 2010 World Cup in South Africa, Chile absolutely dazzled the world with their thrilling, high-octane style. He essentially laid the precise groundwork for Chile's golden generation that would go on to win back-to-back Copa Americas. Fast forward to today, and he took over Uruguay in 2023. He immediately integrated youth, totally revitalized the squad, and successfully qualified a highly exciting Uruguayan team for the 2026 World Cup. He just gives nations this distinct, totally fearless footballing identity.
But it's important to note, Bielsa isn't entirely rigid. As he's aged and moved to teams like Uruguay, he has dynamically adapted his formations. You'll frequently see him utilize a 4-3-3 or a 4-1-4-1 now. However, while the numerical shapes might shift a bit on the chalkboard, his unwavering fundamental principles, that extreme verticality, the relentless pressing, and fluid positional play, those remain 100% intact.
Section 4. The Madman's True Legacy, Ethics, Integrity, and Disciples. Which brings us to the final, and honestly perhaps the most compelling paradox of Marcelo Bielsa. Now what's really fascinating here is the staggering duality of the man. On one hand, you have El Loco, during the infamous Leeds Spygate scandal. After admitting to sending someone to literally spy on an opponent's training, he called a press conference and presented this exhausting, multi-hour tactical PowerPoint. He detailed every single tactic of every single team in the league, basically boring journalists into submission just to prove how obsessively he prepares. But then, on the exact opposite hand, you have El Maestro during the Aston Villa incident. When his Leeds team accidentally scored while a Villa player was down injured, Bielsa immediately ordered his players to stand totally still and allow Aston Villa to walk the ball into the net for an unopposed equalizer. It's this absolute commitment to sportsmanship, combined with his maniacal work ethic, that deeply inspires his players. They see a manager who demands literally everything from them, but who operates with absolute, unimpeachable integrity.
And that intense inspiration, it breeds an entire coaching tree. We're talking about Pep Guardiola, who we touched on earlier, Mauricio Pochettino, who actually played under Bielsa at Newell's Old Boys, calls him a second father. Then you've got Diego Simeone, Jorge Sampaoli, Gerardo Martino. Bielsa isn't just a coach, he's practically an entire movement. His true trophies aren't made of silver or gold, they are these managers. These disciples carry Bielsa's tactical DNA and his philosophical integrity right into the beating heart of modern football.
Bielsa famously said, "A man with new ideas is a madman, until his ideas triumph." And he really proved that you can compete at the highest, most ruthless levels of sports with incredible bravery, uncompromising ethics, and a deep, fundamental respect for your players. He showed everyone that the process, how you actually play the game, matters just as much, if not more, than the final result.
So I'll leave you with this final thought to ponder. When you look at the landscape of modern football today, the high pressing, the lightning-fast transitions, the sheer intensity of the world's best teams, you are essentially looking right into the mind of Marcelo Bielsa. What truly defines a winning legacy? The trophies locked away in a cabinet, or the permanent, undeniable evolution of the game itself? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time as we continue to break down the most fascinating stories in sports and beyond.